In my 25 years on the force, I've seen it all. Murders, robberies, frauds, every kind of crime you can imagine. But some cases, they don't leave you. They stick in your mind like a splinter, an ache that never goes away. The case of Amelia Thorne was one of those for me. A case that went cold because of one small mistake. A little oversight that unraveled everything. It was 15 years ago, a crisp October day when a chill had just started to settle over the city. A 17-year-old girl named Amelia Thorne vanished from her quiet suburban neighborhood. She was a good kid, quiet and studious. Her teachers liked her, and her friends said she never got into trouble. Her disappearance hit the public hard. It was the kind of thing that just didn't happen here. My partner, Detective Miller, and I were the first on the scene at her family's house. Her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thorne, were in a state of shock, their eyes filled with a raw fear I knew all too well. "She was just on her way home from school," Mrs. Thorne sobbed, clutching a crumpled tissue. "She called to say she was at the bus stop and would be home in 10 minutes." They'd last spoken to Amelia at around 3:30 p.m. They assumed she might have gone to a friend's house, but when 8 o'clock rolled around and there was no sign of her, they made the call. We searched their house, the neighborhood, and the surrounding area. The first thing we found was Amelia's school backpack, discarded in some bushes not far from her home. Inside were her textbooks, notebooks, and a half-eaten chocolate bar. But one thing was missing: her phone. As our investigation got underway, the case only grew more complex. We interviewed her friends and teachers, and we spoke with her neighbors. Everyone told us the same thing: Amelia wouldn't just run away. The next morning, we checked the CCTV footage from the bus stop where she made her last call. The footage was grainy, but clear enough to see Amelia get off the bus talking on her phone. She then walked out of view. But there was something strange in the footage. An old light blue van driving away from the bus stop a few minutes after she left. The license plate was unreadable, and we couldn't get a clear look at it. This van was a detail we'd see again and again, but never get a handle on. It was our first big mistake. At the time, we just assumed it was a coincidence. Our second mistake came with our first witness. A waiter at a small cafe near the bus stop, a guy named Mike, said he'd seen Amelia. His testimony gave us a glimmer of hope.
"Yeah, I saw her," Mike said. "She came from the bus stop and was talking to someone right outside the cafe."
"Who was she talking to?"
I asked. Mike replied, "A man, tall, thin, wearing a baseball cap. He had some stubble on his chin."
"Did you hear what they were saying?" Miller asked.
"No, they were talking low," Mike answered. "Then they both got into a van and drove off." The van Mike described matched the blue one from the CCTV footage. We had Mike work with a sketch artist, and what we got was a generic-looking man with an obscured face. But Mike's testimony led us down a new path. We started to believe Amelia had willingly left with this man. We began to treat the case as a missing person instead of a kidnapping. This decision to assume she left on her own was our third and most significant mistake. We based our entire investigation on the theory that Amelia had run away. But then we got another call. It was a farmer from a rural area outside the city. He said something looked odd in his field. When we arrived, we found a shallow hole had been dug. Next to it were Amelia's purse and her wristwatch, and on the ground beside them, there was a small piece of paper with a single letter on it: S. That piece of paper, her purse, her watch, they were a message. There was no intention of letting Amelia Thorne live. This wasn't a simple missing person case. It was a cold, calculated plan, and we'd been chasing the wrong theory the whole time. The Amelia Thorne case taught me that every detail matters. A van, a witness, a scrap of paper. They're all connected. But at the time, we just couldn't put the pieces together. And because of that failure, Amelia Thorne became a cold case. Ever since that day, the mystery of that blue van and the letter S has haunted me. A question that will never be answered.
The S was a slap in the face. It wasn't a ransom note. There was no demand for money or any contact information. It was just a single, menacing letter. It was a taunt. The killer was telling us he was smarter than us, a fact that had been haunting me for 15 years. After we found Amelia's belongings, the case was reclassified from missing person to abduction. We got the ball rolling again, but we were already a week behind. And in a kidnapping case, a week is an eternity. We immediately shifted our focus back to the blue van. We sent out an all-points bulletin and combed through every vehicle registration in the city that matched the description. We came up with a list of over 100 vans. It was a monumental task, but we had to start somewhere. My partner, Miller, was a methodical guy. He spent days going through that list, calling owners and checking their alibis. Most of them were out of town or had their vans parked at a garage. But one name stuck out: Samuel Jenkins. Samuel Jenkins lived just a few blocks from Amelia's house. He was 45, worked as a freelance delivery driver, and had a record for petty theft, but nothing violent. When we went to his house, he was polite and cooperative. He showed us his van, which was a light blue color, and told us he had been working that day, making deliveries all over the city. I was nowhere near that bus stop, he said, his eyes a little too calm. You can check with my clients. I have a logbook. We checked his logbook, and his story seemed to check out. The delivery route he showed us had him miles away from Amelia's neighborhood at the time of her disappearance. Still, I had a bad feeling. There was something in his eyes, a coldness that made me uneasy. We ran his plates and found no matches to the blue van from the CCTV footage. He was cleared, but in my gut, I knew something wasn't right. While Miller was busy with the van owners, I decided to go back to the bus stop. I walked the same path Amelia would have taken, trying to see something we missed. That's when I noticed a small convenience store I had overlooked before. It was tucked away behind the cafe where Mike, the waiter, worked. I went inside and asked the owner if they had any surveillance footage from that day. The owner, a man named Mr. Chen, a kind but reserved man, handed me a dusty hard drive. "My camera's old," he said. "It just records without sound. I don't know if it'll help." I took the hard drive back to the station. The footage was even grainier than the bus stops, but it showed a different angle. It showed Amelia getting off the bus, but instead of walking toward her house, she was approached by a man. He wasn't the man Mike described. This man was much shorter, with a stocky build and a peculiar walk, almost like a limp. He was wearing a hat, but not a baseball cap. It was a dark, knitted beanie. They spoke for a few moments, and I saw Amelia shake her head. The man then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled something out. I couldn't make it out, but Amelia's eyes widened, and her expression changed from defiance to fear. She then followed him. They walked a short distance and got into the passenger side of a car I hadn't seen before. A dark sedan, not a van. The footage from Mr. Chen's store completely contradicted Mike's testimony. Everything Mike had said, the tall, thin man, the baseball cap, the blue van, was a lie. He had deliberately misled us.
I went back to the cafe to question Mike. His manager said he quit 2 days after we interviewed him, and his last known address was a vacant lot. He had vanished without a trace, leaving a trail of lies behind him. He was our only witness, and he had sent us on a wild goose chase. He was the one who said Amelia went willingly, which made us lose precious time. We spent days looking for a fictional blue van and a fictional suspect, while the real killer got away. The Amelia Thorne case became a dead end. We had no real suspect, no valid witness, and the only evidence we had was a small piece of paper with the letter S and a few personal items. That S continued to torment me. What did it mean? Was it a name, a location, a symbol? I spent countless nights in the cold case file room, staring at that letter, trying to decipher its meaning. But it always remained a secret, a silent whisper in the dark, much like the case itself. The S was the last clue we had, and it was a clue we could never solve.
The S was more than a letter. It was a ghost. It haunted my every thought, my every restless night. I had spent years chasing 100 different theories about what it could mean. Was it a name? Samuel, Steve, Stewart? Was it a location? Seattle, Springfield, Shelby? Or was it a symbol of something darker, something twisted that only the killer would understand? My obsession with the S eventually drove me out of active duty. I retired, but I never stopped working the case. The official file was closed, but the case was still wide open in my mind. I was a man looking for a needle in a haystack, and the S was my only guide. Years passed, and the case of Amelia Thorne became a legend in the city, a cautionary tale whispered to teenagers. I lived a quiet life, but I always kept an eye on new leads, new breakthroughs in forensic science. And then a new case crossed my path, one that would unknowingly connect to Amelia's. A young detective, Officer Ben Carter, was working on a series of burglaries in a neighboring town. The burglar was a ghost. No fingerprints, no witnesses, just an uncanny ability to break into homes without a trace. In one of the burglarized homes, Carter found a small piece of paper on a desk. It had a single, bold letter on it, S. The moment I heard about it, my heart stopped. I called Carter immediately. He was a good cop, but young, and he didn't see the significance of the letter. I met him at the station, and he showed me a photo of the paper. It was an exact match. The same shape, the same font, the same chilling simplicity. "This letter, kid," I told him, my voice shaking with a mix of dread and excitement. "It's a signature." Carter was skeptical. "A signature for a burglary? That doesn't make any sense." "No," I said, "it's not a signature for a burglary. It's a signature for a killer." I explained the Amelia Thorne case to him, detailing every piece of information we had, from the lying waiter, Mike, to the grainy footage of the short man with the peculiar limp. I showed him the sketch we made from the man from Mr. Chen's store footage. Carter's eyes widened as he looked at the sketch. "Wait a minute," he said. "I think I've seen this guy." He pulled out a folder from his recent burglary cases. Inside was a surveillance photo from a grocery store. The man in the photo had a short, stocky build and was wearing a beanie, but it was his walk that confirmed it for me. As he walked away from the counter, his left leg dragged slightly, a distinct limp.
We ran facial recognition on the photo, and the results came back almost instantly. The man's name was Silas Vance. He was a known burglar with a rap sheet going back 20 years, but he'd always managed to stay under the radar. His record was clean when Amelia disappeared. But there was a more chilling detail. Silas Vance's rap sheet included a charge for assault with a deadly weapon. The victim was a young woman who had been a witness in a separate burglary case. He had been released from prison just 2 months before Amelia Thorne vanished. We had our suspect. The letter S was his initial. He was the man in the beanie from the security footage, the peculiar limp. It all fit. But there was one last piece of the puzzle to solve. Why did Mike, the waiter, lie to us? I went back to the old cafe. It was now a modern coffee shop, but the building was the same. I talked to the owner and found an old employee list from 15 years ago. I found Mike's full name, Michael Silas. Silas, the same name as our new suspect, Silas Vance. The pieces clicked into place. Mike wasn't just a waiter. He was Silas's brother. The fake witness, the false description, the blue van, it was all a deliberate distraction to throw us off the scent while they got away with their crime. Mike had been the lookout. He was the only one who saw the car and the man, and he lied to protect his brother. I had spent 15 years chasing a ghost, and the truth was right in front of me the whole time. The S was not a symbol. It was the killer's initial, a cold and calculated taunt. And now the ghost of the S was back, and it was leading us directly to a murderer.
I looked at Silas Vance, and for the first time in 15 years, I didn't see a ghost. I saw a man, a killer. But his face gave nothing away. It was a blank canvas, a mask of indifference. "Silas," I began, my voice calm but firm, "let's talk about the S, the one you left at the Thorne residence, and the one you left at the latest burglary scene." Silas chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "You've got the wrong guy, old man. That's not my signature. My signature is not leaving a trace." "Then what about your brother, Mike?" I countered, watching his face for any flicker of emotion. "The one who lied to us, who sent us on a wild goose chase looking for a fictional blue van and a fictional suspect." His smirk vanished. For a split second, I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a cold, hard glare. "I don't know what you're talking about." "We know you had a limp," I continued, pressing him. "We have the security footage from the store, and we found your brother's old employment records. His full name is Michael Silas. He's your brother, and he was the lookout." Silas leaned back in his chair, a defeated look on his face. He stared at the wall for a long moment before turning his eyes back at me. "So, you're smarter than the rest. Good for you. You found the S, but that doesn't prove anything." "The S is your initial, Silas. It's your taunt, your signature. You leave it behind to let us know who we're dealing with," I said, my voice rising with frustration. "Just like you did with the assault victim who was a witness in one of your burglaries." Silas laughed again, this time with a bitter, cynical edge. "You've got it all wrong, detective. The S isn't for Silas. It's for silence.
The silence of the witnesses, the silence of the dead. It's a reminder to everyone that I own the narrative, not you. His words hit me like a physical blow. The S was never about him. It was about the act. It was about controlling the story. The cold logic of it was terrifying. He didn't just want to get away with the crime. He wanted to play a game with us.
Amelia Thorne wasn't your usual victim, I said, changing tactics. Why her? What did she do? Silas sighed, as if he were bored with the conversation. She saw me, that's all. I was casing a house a few blocks from her home. It was an easy job. I was about to go in when I saw her walking home from the bus stop. She looked at me for a moment too long, her eyes filled with curiosity. She wasn't just a witness, she was a threat. She was smart, and she would have remembered me. I nodded slowly, letting his words sink in. So you approached her. The CCTV footage shows you took something out of your jacket pocket. What was it? Silas's eyes glazed over, as if he were reliving the moment. A photograph, a picture of her little sister, Sarah. I'd seen her with her sister a few days before. I told her if she didn't come with me, her sister would disappear next. She didn't hesitate. She came with me without a fight. She was a good girl, a brave one. His cold, casual tone made me sick. He spoke about her like she was a prop, a means to an end. "Where did you take her?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Silas smiled, a chilling, triumphant smile. "That's my secret, old man. That's the one piece of the puzzle you'll never find. You have a motive, you have a witness, you have a confession, but you don't have a body. And without a body, you have no case." He was right. We had found Amelia's purse and watch, but not her. He had confessed to the kidnapping, but without a body, a jury would be hesitant to convict him for murder. His S for silence was more than a taunt. It was a promise that the secrets of Amelia Thorne's disappearance would die with him. The game wasn't over. It was just getting started. Silas Vance's arrogance was a cruel, brilliant strategy. He had confessed to the kidnapping, but the legal system needed more. The defense hammered home one point. Without a body, there was no proof of murder. The jury was deadlocked. A few believed his confession, but the doubt, planted so meticulously by Silas himself, was too strong. He was a master manipulator, and he had won. He was released on a technicality, a free man. I watched him walk out of the courtroom, his head held high, a ghost of a smile on his lips. His S for silence had worked. He was living proof that the legal system wasn't foolproof. He had broken every rule, taunted us at every turn, and walked away. The loss was a bitter pill to swallow. It felt like 15 years of my life had been stolen, just like Amelia's. "He's a ghost," I told Ben later that night as we sat in my old office, a half-empty bottle of whiskey between us. "He's going to disappear, and we'll never see him again." But Ben, with the fiery determination of a young cop, disagreed. "No, sir, he won't disappear. He's too arrogant for that. He needs us to know he won. He'll make another mistake. We just have to be there to catch it." Ben's words gave me a flicker of hope. We began to follow Silas, a constant shadow in his life. We monitored his phone, his bank accounts, and his every move. He was a master of his craft, a ghost in the system, but we were two detectives with nothing to lose.
Weeks turned into months, and our surveillance yielded nothing. Silas was smart. He was living a quiet, unassuming life. He worked odd jobs, kept to himself, and never talked to anyone. He was a man with a secret, and he was taking it to his grave. One evening, Ben came to my house, his face pale and his hands shaking. "He found him," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "He was at a cemetery, a small, unmarked plot. He stood there for an hour, just staring at the ground."
We applied for a warrant to excavate the plot, and a few days later, we got the go-ahead. We brought in a team of forensic experts, and they began to dig. Every shovel of dirt was a moment of agonizing suspense. I prayed for a sign, for something, anything that would give us the justice Amelia deserved. After hours of digging, we found it. Not a body, but a small, corroded metal box. Inside, we found a single, small silver locket. It was tarnished and old, but its contents were unmistakable. Inside were two small photos, one of Amelia and one of her little sister, Sarah. Silas hadn't buried Amelia here. He had buried her secret. The locket was a message. He had taken her, but he had also stolen a part of her soul, her memories, and her life. He was a collector of broken things, and the locket was his prize. We were back at square one. We had a confession, we had his motive, and now we had his twisted souvenir. But we still didn't have a body. The ghost of Amelia Thorne was still haunting us, a phantom presence we couldn't bring to rest. The locket was more than a souvenir. It was a taunt. Silas hadn't just taken a life. He had taken a piece of a family's history and buried it in an empty plot. He was a collector of broken things, and this locket was his prize. I had it on my desk, a small, cold reminder of my failure. I tried to open it again, but it was sealed shut. "He's playing with us, sir," Ben said, watching my futile efforts. "He wants us to know he won. He's laughing at us." "Maybe," I muttered, "or maybe he's leaving us a message." I looked at the locket again. A small, silver capsule of life stolen. The two photos inside, one of Amelia, the other of her younger sister, Sarah. It was a cruel detail, a final act of psychological torment. But something about it felt wrong. It was too easy. The locket was too obvious. My mind kept going back to the first S, the one from the field. It wasn't just a letter. It was a symbol, a taunt. But what if it wasn't? What if it was a clue? I had spent years dissecting it, trying to find a hidden meaning, but I had always been so focused on the killer that I had never considered the victim. I took the locket to a local jeweler, an old man named Mr. Lee, who had worked on cases for the department for years. He took one look at it and shook his head. "This locket is an old one. The clasp is corroded. I can open it, but I might damage it." "Do it," I said. "Just be careful." He carefully pried open the locket, and as he did, a small, almost microscopic piece of paper fell out. It was a tiny folded note, no bigger than a fingernail. It had been hidden in a small compartment in the locket that I had never noticed. It was a secret message, a final act of defiance. I unfolded the paper with trembling hands. On it, in Amelia's small, neat handwriting, were two words: "The Witness." And under the words,
A name. Sarah. I was stunned. Amelia hadn't just gone willingly, she had gone to protect her sister. But the message, what did it mean? Was Sarah a witness? I replayed the surveillance footage from the store in my mind. The man had pulled out a photo of Sarah, and Amelia had gone with him. But what if there was more to it? What if Silas was just the one who carried out the act, but the real witness was still out there? I immediately called Ben. Find Sarah Thorne. She's not a victim, she's a witness. Find her now. The pieces of the puzzle began to click into place. The S was not for Silas, it was for Sarah. She was the true witness, the one who saw everything. Silas hadn't just taken Amelia, he had taken her in front of her little sister. And Amelia, in a final act of bravery, had left us a clue for us, for her, for me to find. The locket was never about taunting us. It was about saving her sister. Amelia had known what her captor was doing, and she had outsmarted him in her final moments. She had left us a message, a lifeline, and we had almost missed it. Now, all we had to do was find the witness. The girl who saw a killer take her sister. The girl who was now a woman, a ghost of her own past, and the only person who could help us find the truth.
I knew finding Sarah would be the hardest part. She was no longer a victim. She was the last living witness to a murder. I had spent 15 years chasing a ghost, and the truth was about to be revealed by a woman who had been forced to live with the ghost of her sister for half her life. We knocked on the door, and a moment later, a woman in her late 20s answered. Her eyes were tired, and she had a quiet sadness about her. She was a mirror image of the girl in the locket, with the same kind, quiet eyes. "Sarah Thorne?" I asked. She nodded slowly. "Yes, who are you?" I held up my badge. "Detective John Riley. This is Officer Ben Carter. We need to talk to you about your sister, Amelia." Her face went pale, and her eyes filled with fear. "I don't know anything," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please, just go." "Sarah, please," I pleaded, my voice full of an empathy I didn't know I still had. "Your sister left us a message. It's a clue that only you can help us with. It's about the witness." Her eyes widened in a flicker of recognition, but she quickly masked it. "I don't know what you're talking about." "She left us a message in her locket," Ben interjected, his tone gentle but firm. "It says the witness is Sarah. Please, Sarah, we know you saw something." Her shoulders slumped in defeat, and she finally let us in. We sat in her living room, a quiet, orderly place filled with family photos. She picked up a framed photo of her and Amelia as children, their arms wrapped around each other, their smiles wide and carefree. "I tried to forget," she said, her voice cracking. "I tried to bury it, but the nightmares never stopped. Every night I relive it." I looked at her, my heart aching. She wasn't just a witness, she was a victim. She had been forced to live with the memory of her sister being taken away. I felt the weight of my own guilt pressing down on me. We had failed her, and now we were asking her to relive the worst day of her life. "Tell us what happened, Sarah," I said, my voice soft. "Don't leave anything out. We know it wasn't a blue van. We know the man wasn't tall and thin. Tell us what you saw." She took a deep breath, her eyes closed as if she were gathering her courage. "I was in the living room, looking out the window. I saw Amelia get off the bus, but she didn't come to the house.
A car pulled up. It was a dark sedan. A short, stocky man with a limp got out.
She paused, and tears began to stream down her face. He started talking to her, and she was shaking her head. She kept saying, "No, I don't know you." Then he showed her a photo. He held it up, and her face went white. "What was in the photo?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Me," she said, her voice a pained sob. "It was a picture of me. He said if she didn't come with him, he would take me next. He knew who I was. He had been watching us." Amelia looked at me through the window. She shook her head as if to say, "Don't do anything." And then she went with him. A wave of understanding washed over me. Amelia wasn't just protecting her sister, she was giving us a clue. She had seen the man and her sister together, and she had used that knowledge to leave a message. "What did you see, Sarah? Anything else?" Sarah closed her eyes, and a shudder ran through her body. She saw something on his hand, a small tattoo. It was a symbol, a snake with a letter on its head, the letter S. I looked at Ben, a jolt of electricity running through me. The S wasn't just a signature, it was a brand, a permanent mark. We had him. We had the last piece of the puzzle. The ghost of the S was now a man with a tattoo, and we were going to find him. The long and silent suffering of the witness was finally over.
Silas Vance sat across from me, his face a mask of smug satisfaction. We had rearrested him on new evidence, the testimony of a long-lost witness, Sarah Thorne. But he just smiled, a cruel, knowing look in his eyes. He knew that without a body, a jury would never convict him of murder. "You've got nothing, old man," he said, his voice a low growl. "A girl's testimony from 15 years ago? No jury will believe her. It's too late." "You're wrong," I said, my voice as steady as a rock. I had rehearsed this moment for days. I looked him dead in the eye, and I saw a flicker of doubt. "Sarah remembered you. She remembered the photo you showed her of her sister, and she remembered your limp." He just shrugged, a casual gesture that belied the tension in the room. "I have a limp, so what? Lots of people have limps. The photo? She's making it up. You're grasping at straws, detective." "Maybe," I conceded, "but a witness saw something else, too. Something you left behind. Something permanent." I looked at Ben, and he pulled a large poster board out of a bag. On it was a detailed drawing of a snake with the letter S on its head. It was a perfect replica of the tattoo Sarah had described. Silas's face went white. The smugness vanished, replaced by pure, unadulterated fear. He stared at the drawing, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. That's not real," he stammered. "That's not my tattoo. You're lying." "Oh, it's real," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. "And we know exactly where it is. On your right hand. We're going to get a warrant to check your hands, and when we find it, you're going away for a long, long time." His breath hitched in his throat. He had forgotten. He had been so focused on the lies he had told, the distractions he had created, that he had forgotten the one thing he couldn't hide. He had given us a permanent clue, a silent confession he carried on his skin. "But a tattoo doesn't prove anything,"
he said, his voice now a desperate whisper. "You're right," I said. "It proves you were there. It proves you're the man Sarah saw, and we already have your confession from the first interrogation. You confessed to the kidnapping, and that tattoo proves you're the one who did it. The jury will believe us. They'll believe we have the right man, and they'll know you're a monster." His shoulders slumped in defeat. The game was over. He had lost. He finally looked up at me, his eyes filled with a raw hatred I had only seen in the most hardened criminals. "So you win, old man," he said, a bitter, defeated laugh escaping his lips. "You got your confession, you got your witness, you got your tattoo. So what? You still don't have a body." "That's where you're wrong," I said, a wave of cold resolve washing over me. I leaned in, my voice low and menacing. "You want to play games? Let's play. Tell us where the body is, and we'll make sure the world knows you're the one who killed her. We'll make sure everyone knows you're a monster." He was silent for a long moment, staring at the floor. He knew I was right. He wanted the world to see him as a winner, a master of the game. He had to be the one to tell the story. He needed to be the one to reveal the final piece of the puzzle. He looked up at me, his face a grim mask of acceptance. "The school, the old abandoned one on the edge of town, the one with the broken clock tower. There's a small locker room in the basement. I buried her in the wall." My heart.
The moment Silas Vance gave us the location, a part of me felt a sense of relief I hadn't known in 15 years. The ghost of Amelia Thorne was about to be laid to rest. But the relief was short-lived, replaced by the grim reality of what we were about to do. We were no longer chasing a suspect. We were hunting for a body. The old school was a haunted place. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret, every creak and groan a whisper from the past. We found the locker room exactly where Silas had said it would be. The air was colder here, heavier, as if the very walls were holding a breath they had been waiting to exhale for a decade and a half. "The third locker from the right," I told the team. "He said he buried her in the wall." The forensics team went to work, their tools making a rhythmic scraping sound against the brick and mortar. With every piece of plaster that fell, with every brick that was pulled out, my heart pounded in my chest. I watched, a silent sentinel, as the wall slowly revealed its secret. And then they found her. Not a skeleton, but a wrapped bundle, preserved by the dry, cold air. The forensics team carefully removed it, and as they did, I saw a small, faded blue blanket, the same blue as the school bus Amelia used to take. A final, cruel detail left by a killer who wanted to make a statement. I stood there, looking at the bundle, and a wave of grief washed over me. It wasn't the relief of a case solved, but the profound sadness of a life stolen. She wasn't just a case number anymore. She was a girl who had been taken from her family, her dreams, and her future. The next day, I went to see Mr. and Mrs. Thorne. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. They were older now, their faces etched with the lines of a 15-year-long sorrow. When I told them we had found her, Mrs. Thorne broke down, sobbing with a mixture of grief and relief. "She's home," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "She's finally coming home."
The police department gave Amelia a quiet, dignified burial. The Thorne family was there, as were Ben Carter and I. The entire department came to pay their respects. As the coffin was lowered into the ground, I looked at her parents. For the first time, I saw a sense of peace on their faces. They could finally mourn. The ghost of their daughter was finally at rest. The media was all over the story. They called it a miracle, a triumph of justice. But I knew the truth. It wasn't a miracle. It was the result of a long, painful journey of chasing a ghost and fighting for a truth that had been buried for years. The next day, I went to see Silas Vance. He looked up at me, his face devoid of emotion. "You found her," he said, his voice a flat monotone. "I told you you couldn't do it. I told you I would, and now you're going to pay for what you did. You're going to spend the rest of your life in a cell thinking about what you did and knowing that your silence was a failure." I walked away from the cell, and as I did, I heard him laugh, a hollow, defeated sound that echoed in the lonely silence of the hallway.